Hi, everyone, and welcome back to yet another episode of This Week with INDIAai with me, Sindhuja, and my colleague Jibu. Hi, Jibu, how are you? It's been a while.
Hi, Sindhuja. No, we just spoke last week.
Really? It seems like a very long
Remember?
week then. Work from home is
Okay,
just blurring
okay.
all timelines, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think that has become a tagline of yours. Hi, Chibu. It's been a while. When we record podcast every week, and so but yeah, keep that. It can be your catchphrase.
No, actually, I do mean it because I really do feel like it's really been a while. The last time we actually saw each other was almost 6 months ago, before lockdown started, and I think
Not
remote
six
life.
month. It was December
See
2019.
what I mean? It's been a while. This is
Ah.
what I meant.
Yes, of course. Yeah, December 2019. That's when the Carnegie Global
That's
Tech
right.
Summit
We
was
met
happening.
then. That's right.
Yeah,
So yeah.
yeah. God, this year has been
Oh, this year's
okay.
just
Don't let's get started on 2020. It's like Sindhuja. You always say, we have written off the year.
yeah, I
This is
know.
like
That's true. I think, when
it's
it comes to
there's
life goals, we sort of have to accept that, okay, maybe this year isn't going to be that definitive. But, I do think that things have to change in the sense that our perspectives have to change. At least we know that we're in for the long haul, but it's business
hmm.
as usual. And I think we should take a moment and reflect and see how well both of us have come. We've done this entire podcast. How many episodes now? 8 episodes, 7 episodes, and we've just been doing this remotely.
This is the eighth episode we are
See,
recording. Yeah.
completely remotely, interviews are happening,
Yes.
calls are happening. The popularity of India AI is growing. Lots of people want to work with us, want to get featured by us. So yeah, maybe this year shouldn't be written off after all, right?
Definitely agree with you, but as because before the podcast we discussed, I mean things are not that it's a difficult situation, right? We are in a point
Yeah,
where we can't even identify if we have COVID or not, right?
yeah.
I mean, it's scary as well as the fact that there are many people with COVID who are not affected by it. The asymptomatic people that can be a positive side, but then again, these people can give it to other vulnerable people. So
Hmm.
it's very difficult to find things that can make you optimistic,
Yeah.
without being cautious, right? That's a
Yeah.
very difficult situation to be in.
As I was saying, Jubu, I don't think we have to always continuously look at everything from a doom and gloom situation. And if anything, I think this particular period has taught me how to look at opportunities arising from even very challenging times like the one that we're going through right now. And we all know that it's going to be for the long haul, but what else can we do? How else can we explore the use of technology for making our lives better? And for me, I think what one aspect that really stood out for me this entire month, where we focused extensively on agri-tech innovation and the use of AI across the sector like agri-tech, it's really taught me that no matter where you are, you could be sitting in the US, you could be sitting in some farm in Bihar, and you could still continue to make a difference using technology and run your business remotely if you need to. And if our farmers of our country are able to get to a point where in the middle of a pandemic in 2020, they can say, you know what, it's a tough time. I can't physically go to my fields, but I can still ensure that majority of the work can be done. Then I think, we've made a dent with technology. So keeping that in mind, I just want to sort of bring a segue into this week's interview, the Leading with AI column, where I speak to a person from within the tech industry, or rather a leader from the tech industry, to see what they're really doing. So this week we have Ranveer Chandra from Microsoft. He is a lead researcher. He has in fact started his career there. He finished his BTech from IIT Kharagpur in computer science, and went on to study went on to finish a PhD in computer science from Cornell, an Ivy League university. And he's been employed with Microsoft for more than 15 years. And while he was working in research, he actually came across this idea of developing an end-to-end IoT platform specifically meant for collecting, gathering farming data, called Azure FarmBeats. And now he is basically the chief scientist. He's not only a chief scientist at Microsoft Research, but also is the principal researcher for this particular initiative. And Ranveer was, great to talk to. In fact, he dialed in from Seattle, and we had a phenomenal conversation about the work that's being done with a platform like Microsoft Azure FarmBeats. So Chandra spent a lot of time, growing up in India, even though he's based out of the US right now. Growing up, Chandra spent a lot of time in Jamshedpur, but he also used to spend a lot of his summer holidays and winter holidays with his grandparents in this field, in this town called Bhagalpur in Bihar. So it was not a trip that he enjoyed as a child because obviously he didn't have much to do in a village. But he and his siblings really understood firsthand the kind of challenges one has to encounter living in a village, and especially make a livelihood in agriculture. So I think that was his turning point in his mind, where he decided, okay, I have to do something when I grow up, and it has to be something that could probably impact agriculture in a big way. So that was sort of the story that led to how Farm Beats really started, or rather the idea must have sort of germinated in his head many years ago, and he finally found that opportunity with a tech giant like Microsoft. And it was in 2018 when the product moved into the mainstream, and he was able to really sort of bring it out there, into the mainstream in terms of partnerships. So Microsoft Azure Farm Beats has multiple partnerships with the USDA, the Commonwealth Scientific and Industrial Research Organization, the Nigeria incentive-based risk-sharing system for agricultural lending, or called NIRSAL, is basically run by the Central Bank of Nigeria. And more recently, they signed an agreement with Land O'Lakes, which is a Minnesota-based member-owned agricultural cooperative that's focused on the dairy industry of that region. So through these networks, the idea is to reach more growers, more planters, more farmers, and help them adopt how Microsoft Azure Farm Beats really works.
It's incredible that what's happening. I mean, a few days back, I had a conversation with a journalist about AI deployment, AI adoption, and general things. It was a conversation, and when we were having conversation, I just realized that how much people are unaware of the fact that how much of AI is being deployed for things that might not look so fancy or futuristic, right?
Right.
When the problem is the perception of AI, right? When you say AI, the first thing that comes to people's mind are iRobot, a Terminator,
Yeah.
Spielberg's AI. I love that movie though,
Yeah.
Joel Oswald. All these things, right? It gives them that vision of a dystopian future, or where the machine is taking control and things are different. So AI has pretty much, or Sophia, I mean, that's
Of
something
course.
I'm not happy about, right? Whenever you say AI, people say, "Hey, what about Sophia?" But as a technology, right? AI, like as many people have pointed out, people like Bill Gates has pointed out, AI can be a powerful technology, and it impact will be more than what we had experience with electricity or even the internet. So,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
and this adaptation, we call deployment, we call AI adoption. This happens in small areas. You start in these niches. Like I think we have said it in like multiple podcasts. Identifying the right problems and solving them with technology. That's
Yeah.
where the ultimate, progress happens. So
Yeah.
especially with AI, that's completely true, right? Like we have seen from time and time again how. Especially in agriculture, as we have become expert in agriculture, and we will be starting a chili farm very soon in rural Karnataka. So horticulture farm, I forgot that. Yeah. So that being said, it's incredible that this whole month, while we were looking at agriculture and how every a facet of agriculture has been transformed. I mean, maybe it's not being deployed around the country. It's not scaled up yet. Like the story about Agri 10x, or all the other startups, Cropin, all the startups we spoke about, right? And it's interesting that they are addressing some of the areas, especially things like farm credit and crop insurance. Those are the biggest problems for farmers, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So for example, one of the challenges with farmers in getting loan is that we speak these days about how there are so many lending fintech organizations out there, like lending card and all those guys, who will take your data points and create a credit profile for you,
Yeah.
and then lend you the money, right?
Right.
But with these farmers, I'm talking about small scale farmers, they don't have any data points to take, right? They are not tech savvy people, right? They are not using social media. They're not buying anything regularly from Amazon or Flipkart. So how do you take these data points, right? I mean, this, and how do you assess the fact that if they are eligible for a loan, or if they are eligible for a particular insurance payout? So one of the key things I have been seeing in the last few months, especially with startups like Cropin, is how this financial side of agriculture is being addressed. I think you also
Absolutely.
did some interesting research into this field, if I'm correct.
Yeah, actually, so I did a very cool story as well, where Cropin is using a platform like this. So to answer your question about how to get these data points, the idea is to take a step back. So if you just go, to a farmer straight up and ask him for certain kinds of data points, he may or may not be able to give it to you. The idea is to enable him to work with data from a much earlier standpoint. Let me take a minute to explain exactly what I mean. So let's say there is a farm that's, say, outside the city of Bangalore. And the idea is to not sell the agri-lending or financing options to him. The idea is to sell the beauty of data. It's the onus is essentially to make the farmer understand that unless and until there is a way for me to scan data points across your farm, be it on your farm health, be it on the soil content, the moisture that is trapped in the soil that you have accordingly, which is going to nourish your plants, the weather patterns that you're subjected to at this point in time, and what you can really predict and work with. There are so many factors. Unless these data points are not collected and aggregated and stored and analyzed using edge and using computing and using artificial intelligence, then this data is really of no use, right? It's just sitting by itself without actually meaning anything to anybody. Once this data is collected and once this data is processed and made sense of, therein comes a value proposition to actually introduce various other aspects such as agri-lending. So based on this, for instance, a bank can make a far more, or an NBFC can make a very, very informed decision, or a fairly informed decision, depending on the amount of data available on a farm, in terms of, let's say if the data says that there is X amount of produce that this particular farmer can generate within this particular harvest season, then the bank knows for a fact, okay, this data is telling me that by December, I'm going to get X amount of produce, which means based on this, and if he's planned his harvest well, then maybe the next season is also going to yield a certain amount, or maybe 2x if he plans it well. So if you know for a fact that, okay, there is a reliable person here, there is a reliable farmer who tells me based on fact that he is going to give me, a certain amount of produce, or his entire venture is going to be profitable, then it actually makes it more of an incentive for the banker to lend him a line of credit, right? Otherwise, it's just hogwash, or it's just basically estimations. If the banker can't really understand for sure, that is actually one of the fundamental problems when it comes to financing in agriculture. The banker has no guarantee. You have to basically put something as a guarantee to get a big loan. I think that's something that all of us have faced at some point, right? You need to have someone who can come and say that, yeah, you know what, this person is not going to default. We usually have our parents, come and sign these, loan papers for us, right? When we have to take a home loan, or when we have to take like a big amount of money. So who's the person, or what is it that makes a farmer look credible in the eyes of a banker? His only asset at this point is data. And it also sort of breaks away that bad habit, because more often than not, what happens in India is farmers take loans, but don't end up using those loans for agricultural purposes. They either, use it to buy something for the house, or they end up paying for their children's weddings, or it's basically something that is not used for the purpose that it is intended for. With this, you can actually use collateral, which is data based, and say, I'm giving you X amount of credit, weighing you against your data, which basically works as your collateral. So I think if artificial intelligence were to be deployed in a far more strategic and a more organized manner, it can really revolutionize the way financing is done in this country. The entire responsibility of this does not have to fall on the NABARD, which is the main body that is responsible for managing the financing needs of farmers. And of course, they were
We
famous
call it
for,
NABARD.
we call it NABARD. And they're famous, of course, for
Yes.
bringing in the Kisan credit cards as well. But the truth is, the Kisan credit cards or the KCCs don't cover most of the farmers in our country. So where do they go for a line of credit? And what do they weigh it against, more importantly? So I think AI,
It's
can,
interesting.
can, can address that very critical gap, in my opinion.
Agriculture credit system, like I spoke and you have explained, if we can address that part properly, that's like one of the base problems, fundamental problems solved, right? Then there are few other areas you can address, and as a result, these are like the Pareto principle. There's a principle,
Yeah.
there's a theory in economics which says that 30% of events brings 70% of results, and 70% of
Yeah,
things only give you 30% of results. I
correct.
mean, I have seen it in, I mean, there is different variation. Could be 75-25, 80-20 principle, but it's a fact, right? And there are the 30% things that has been one of the big challenges for agriculture
Yeah,
and farmers. And if you can address that 30%, and I
yeah,
think that's where AI is being used most efficiently these days.
yeah,
I feel that way. So if
definitely.
you can address that, then you scale up, right? Then
Yeah.
then the rest of the 30, you will get automatically addressed.
Yeah, that's the hope, and I think the startup of the week that I spoke to is also sort of trying to do that in a sort of a macro level way, but I think it's a
Hmm.
good start nevertheless. So this is a very cool startup called INDIAai. They're based out of Ahmedabad, and their whole purpose is essentially drive a farmer again, to really evangelize the use of data. That's what I found to be very compelling about this particular startup story. So it's one of its co-founders is this gentleman called Deepak Parikh, who has spent extensive amounts of time, speaking with farmers, living with them, understanding their patterns, and he has deduced pretty much the same thing that we've discussed in our earlier podcast as well, that farmers do not have an organized way of doing their business. And essentially speaking, the first and the oldest entrepreneur we have in our country is the farmer. I mean, he's someone who has to sort of, scale up his business from the word go. But how is he going to do that? He needs tools, he needs equipment, he needs credit, he needs capital, he needs investment. It's a lot of things that have to come together. So a startup like DigiAgri is aiming to bring all of these things, make it all happen together by using technology. So they're using blockchain, they're using AI, they're using sensors, they're using GIS to essentially map out the farm and give this farmer an entire data map saying, this is your farm in a digital footprint. So we have all the information about the weather patterns, about the crops you grow, about your irrigation patterns and suggestions in terms of what you should be doing, how your soil should be taken care of, what kind of pesticides you should put, how much you should put, what kind of crops you can grow, what kind of crops you shouldn't grow, because some people just, end up cultivating their land without having to leave it free, but maybe it's the wrong crop for the wrong field. You wouldn't know that unless you understood what kind of data you're dealing with. So they aggregate and bring all of this information together, and that helps the farmers make far more informed decisions about whatever problems they might be facing. So some farmer might be having an issue with, again, raising capital, but if he has the right amount of data, he can take that confidently to a banker and say, this is what I have, this is my farm, basically this is a digital map of my entire farm. Now I can, you can actually give me a line of credit based on actual data, not on some guesswork. So a farmer can essentially take his, data map on his smartphone or on any kind of smart device, take it to a banker, and there is a very compelling use case to say, hey, give me a line of credit because here's all my data, and this will enable you to make an informed decision based on what I can provide you as collateral to pay you back your loan with interest over a period of time. Or maybe he could get himself far better networked with a line of FPOs or farmer producer organizations to be able to sell to better markets if he's able to get a better price. And if data is enabling him to do that, then that's one bridge really crossed. So it's startups like this, like DigiAgri, who are all trying to create an ecosystem, really. I mean, I don't think they're trying to just address one problem at a time. It's a very ambitious endeavor, in my opinion, but it's a great start nevertheless, because there could be more people that could build on this in the years to come. Right now, DigiAgri is largely prevalent in the state of Gujarat, and they're facing a lot of, and they're doing quite well, and they're quite confident of their performance, and they hope to be able to scale it to other states in the next few months.
That's incredible. I mean, as we wind up this month of July, I mean, the volume of information and insight we gained in,
Yeah,
especially in the how technology is being used in agriculture, right? And I mean, even though we are limited to this age of narrow AI, how AI technology has been used to solve many of these problems has been inspirational. I think that's the right word to
absolutely.
say.
It's been an eye opener for me, at least this past month, just to see
And
what's been happening. Yeah.
we come across this startup founders who has a different set of ideals
Yeah.
and a different set of principles. I mean, for example, we have startup founders who are not like the traditional Silicon Valley founders, what
Yeah.
Indian founders try to imitate. These are people who goes to villages,
Yeah.
speak to the farmers, who does the groundwork, right? Try to understand the problem from a
And
first principle
data,
perspective.
oh, they are really addressing the challenge of data in the most ground up way possible, because they identify that collection of data, gathering and storage of data, especially agricultural data in India, is a huge challenge. So they have taken
Hmm.
it upon themselves to bring the data sets to the table completely and not rely on anybody, saying we will collect the data. Even if it takes a year, 2 years to do that, we will do it. And that's exactly what they're doing. And it continues. And that's how their AI is becoming more accurate. That's how their analytics are becoming more sharper. Their suggestions are becoming more accurate. And the numbers show it. The farmers that these people are working with are all very, very happy.
This, yes, but this leads to another challenge, which comes as a side effect, right? The whole idea of collecting all this data and
Mm.
processing all this data. Now there's a question about what about the privacy? What about the consent here, right? How are we overseeing this data? I mean, now
Mm.
you start with farm data. What about other data that been used to train AI systems, right? What if you have policing data used for predictive policing? What if you use healthcare data, from a particular kind of people? And this leads to the whole Pandora's box of AI bias, fairness in AI,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
AI black box. So I mean, thankfully I think we are addressing it in a very early stage. As our ecosystem is growing,
Mm.
it's like we are applying all this. What is the right word to say? Frameworks around it, the fence around it, so
We're
that
building the guardrails, hopefully.
yes. So
Yeah.
for example, a few days back, Niti Aayog had a workshop with World Economic Forum on responsible AI, and most importantly, our Minister Ravi Shankar Prasad ji
Mm.
was been very vocal in the G20 digital, economy ministers meeting. Ravi Shankar Prasad was advocating the need for creating trustworthy digital systems, which
Absolutely.
can transform society and economy. So of course, we say, India's whole idea with AI is treating AI as a transformational force, but
Mm.
it should not come at a cost, right? It's like we say, right? The treatment could not get much dangerous than the illness itself. So I think
Yeah.
that's why the correct guardrails are applied. METI had a framework for data privacy
Mm.
and things like that, and our data protection bill is still on the desk of Parliament. So with all these things happening, and there is a global movement happening, promoting the need to build responsible AI. We have seen the coalition against technology, because the group, there's a group of 3,000 more AI researchers, including myself, who signed
Mm-hmm.
this petition of usage of AI tools for predictive policing in US and many other countries. We have
Mm.
seen employees from Google protesting against Google giving AI solution to Pentagon. We have seen
Correct.
both Amazon and Microsoft withdrawing their facial recognition systems, from IBM. I mean, IBM and Amazon withdrawing their facial recognition systems from the market, from the access of many government, in order to safeguard those solutions, especially when things like racial biases and other sort of biases are at an all time high. So
Yeah.
now
Yeah.
that with those things, and we next month we are gonna give these elements a much higher importance. What is responsible AI? I mean, it's
Mm.
easy to say you are responsible AI, but what are there? What is the ethics in AI? How do you build an ethically sound AI system?
Right.
How do you address the issues of black box AI? Black box. How do you make machine learning products more transparent? Especially
Mm.
that we are going into a generation where AI programs will be becoming decision makers.
Mm.
So all these things, I mean, if we were to start a conversation on this, it can go on and on and on and on, because it's like a Pandora's box, literally,
It
like,
is.
figuratively, like a Pandora's box. So that will be our main theme for next month, like how we demonstrated how AI is being used in agriculture. We want to bring this serious conversation point, like what our minister has done by himself. We want to make these points part of public discourse, and we are looking forward to having some incredible articles, webinars, of course podcasts, and many other ways in which we can we can enlighten as well as enrich, our audiences, our thoughts and ideas on what is ethical AI, what is responsible AI, or all these words which can seem vague, when you see first time, right? What is
Hmm.
fair AI? What is transparency? But these are not as complex as it seems. But I think we have reached a point where we should start addressing these topics. What do you think,
I
Sindhuja?
I couldn't agree more. I think that's the beauty of being a part of an AI ecosystem like this with you and with all of our colleagues back at INDIAai, Jibu, is that we're building. We can see how the adaptability and the adoption of AI is just increasing manifold across sectors today, and the fact that we are simultaneously having this tough discussion about responsibility, ethics, the right thing, the moral sort of guardrails that we were talking about itself shows that the ecosystem to build a technology of the future, this is how it's supposed to be done. This is the right way to go about it. There's no, I mean, it's very counterproductive when you make all the innovations and then start discussing the ethics of it after problems have happened. And I think our previous sectors and previous business systems that have been built around newer technologies, I think, are lessons in that, wherein you scale completely and then you realize, oh, maybe there are these problems that we didn't actually address while we were developing it. So now they're sort of backtracking themselves and saying, okay, what else could we have done differently? So I reckon and I hope that because of discussions like this, because of initiatives like INDIAai as well, and the fact that we're dedicating an entire month to covering AI and ethics, I think these are steps that build the ecosystem, in a more mature way while we're also looking to scale. So I'm very excited, as we come to an end of for this particular episode, the last one of this month. I'm very excited to see what next month has in store. And that's it from me and Jibu this week. Thank you so much, all of you, for tuning in, and we'll be back very
Thank you,
soon
Sindhuja.
with more content.